There are people, and then there are those who transcend the ordinary. Some people have the power to reconfigure the trajectory of our lives forever, just as David did when he crossed paths with the remarkable Abigail. This narrative develops after the death of Samuel, David's mentor. It came to pass that Samuel died, and all Israel came together and mourned him and buried him in his house in Ramah. And David cried out and went down into the wilderness of Paran. It was sheep shearing time, a time of generous hospitality towards others. Shearing was celebrated with a feast, where food flowed in abundance for everyone. There was a man and man, flocks and properties were in Carmel. He was rich, had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and was in Carmel to shear the sheep. His name was Nabal, and his wife Abigail. She was sensible and beautiful in appearance, but Nabal, on the contrary, was harsh and perverse in his dealings. Nabal was immensely rich, but his wealth was summed up in material goods, the most superficial level of threats. Nabal carried this name that echoed his foolish character. In ancient Israel, names carried with them a person's character. We don't know if Nabal earned this name or if he deserved it, but he lived up to its meaning. In contrast, Abigail, his wife, possessed striking beauty and profound insight. In addition to Abigail, the Bible reserves the praise beautiful for a few women, such as Rachel and Esther. In Abigail's case, there is a question that permeates our mind. How could a stunning woman like Abigail unite with a man like Nabal? In ancient society, the marriage union was often not based exclusively on physical attraction or external beauty. Economic considerations, family alliances, and social stability were often preponderant factors in choosing partners. Abigail, even though she was a stunning woman, may have joined Nabal for practical and social reasons. Perhaps it was an arranged union aimed at consolidating financial interests, power alliances, or maintaining family status. Therefore, Abigail's beauty may not have been the main factor in choosing participation at that time. 1 Samuel 25 verses 4-9. Then David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing sheep, and he envied 10 young men, and he said to the young men,
"Go up to Carmel, and when you go to Nabal, greet him for me. And thus you will say to him who lives in prosperity, Peace be with you, and peace be with your house, and peace be with all that you have. And now I hear that you have the shearers. Now, we did not mistreat the shepherds you have with us, nor did they lack anything all the days they were in Carmel. Ask your boys, and they will tell you. Let these young men therefore find grace in your sight, for we have come on a good day. So give to your servants and to David your son whatever you find in your hand."
David proposed this because he had performed a valuable service for Nabal, protecting his flocks during attacks by the Philistines. To our contemporary ears, it may seem like a protectionist agreement, but that was not the case. David had done an exceptional job, an action beneficial to Nabal. We read, Nabal was shearing his sheep. This highlights how David chose the opportune moment to claim the reward for his services. Even though he protected Nabal's flocks and shepherds for a long time, David waited until Nabal made a profit from sheep shearing. We read that David sent 10 young men. This gesture demonstrates David's respectful approach. Not only did he greet Nabal through messengers, but he also chose words of peace, love, and generosity to keep Nabal from feeling threatened or intimidated. Next, the text informs us, "Your shepherds were with us. There was nothing missing. Ask your young men and they will tell you." This illustrates how David made his request with consideration, patience, and transparency, offering Nabal a detailed account of the services provided. He mentioned the giving customs associated with sheep shearing. David continues,
"Please give whatever comes to your hand."
He did not insist on a specific amount or impose a price. Instead, he left the decision in Nabal's hands. At that moment, David's messengers awaited the answer. Nabal responded provocatively,
"Who is David and who is the son of Jesse? Many servants are separating themselves from their masters these days. Should I take the bread and water and meat that I have prepared for my shearers and give it to men I don't even know about? Where are..."
This answer could not be ignorance of who David was, since he was famous throughout Israel. It was a direct and conscious affront to David. Nabal insinuated,
"Who does he think he is? There are many servants nowadays who separate themselves each from their master."
Nabal continues to belittle David, portraying him as a rebellious servant. However, this statement is unfounded, as David had always prudently defended himself in the face of Saul's persecutions. Nabal reveals his pettiness and indifference. Instead of recognizing that everything belongs to the Lord and is therefore worthy of sharing, Nabal sees everything as his exclusive property. The concept of generosity that assumes that everything I have belongs to the Lord and you are entitled to a share too is absent in Nabal. In 1 Samuel 25 verse 13 we read, "Then David said to his men,"
Each one wields his sword.
Around 400 men armed themselves. Nabal hit exactly the spot he wanted with his provocative response. He knew that he was insulting not only David's messengers, but David himself. Nabal's response left David no choice but to prepare for a possible conflict. David was ready for the fight. This was not a wise decision on David's part. This is not how God expects us to react to insults. God encourages us to respond to evil with kindness. However, here we see David not reacting in the way God wanted. Nabal obviously knew David's reputation, and his insult was deliberate. Nabal's servants alerted Abigail to the situation. They witnessed how good David's men had been to them, offering protection and provision as they tended the flocks in the fields. They described David as a constant shield of protection. On this basis, they begged Abigail to intervene, as they realized that Nabal was about to unleash David's wrath. 1 Samuel 25:18-20 records. Then Abigail hurried, took 200 loaves of bread, 2 jars of wine, 5 prepared sheep, 5 measures of parched grain, 100 raisin cakes, and 200 fig cakes, and put them on donkeys. She said to his servants,
"Go before me, and I will follow you."
But she did not tell her husband Nabal. As Abigail rode toward David, she came across him and his men. The scene is set for an imminent confrontation. Abigail acted quickly. This woman demonstrated wisdom and insight, recognizing the urgency of the situation and acting immediately. She took the necessary steps that Nabal should have taken. The speed with which Abigail gathered such a significant amount of food is a reflection of Nabal's great wealth. The presence of so much food available makes Nabal's disrespectful response to David all the more disconcerting. 1 Samuel 25:21-22. David had declared,
In vain I protected everything that this man possesses in the desert, so that nothing would be missing from everything that belongs to him, and he repays me with evil. May God do the same with David's enemies, and even more, if he leaves alive until dawn even one man of anything that belongs to Nabal. And he repaid me good for evil.
David was factually correct, but his heart was not aligned with justice. This defined David's decision. He was planning to attack Nabal and all the men in his house. That was the expected answer. Abigail was perceptive in being the first to spot David. Upon seeing him, she quickly got off her donkey and prostrated herself before him, leading a procession of gifts and sustenance. 1 Samuel 25:23-31. When Abigail saw David, she hurried, got off her donkey and fell face down before David, bowing in respect. Kneeling before him, she said,
"My lord, let me take the blame. Allow your servants to speak to you. Hear the words of your servant. I ask you not to pay attention to this worthless man, Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly follows him. But I, your servant, did not see the young men you sent. Therefore, my lord, I swear by the Lord and by your own life, that the Lord has prevented you from shedding blood and seeking revenge with your own hands. Be like your enemies, and those who seek evil for my lord as useless as Nabal. Now, accept this gift that your servant brought for my lord, and give it to the young men who follow my lord. I pray that you forgive the trespass of your servant, for the Lord will certainly build an enduring house for my lord. For my lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil will not be found in you all your days. Even if someone rises up to persecute you and seek your life, my master's life will be safe in the beam of life with the Lord your God. But he will sling your enemies like stones from a sling. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord shall do for my lord according to all the good which he hath spoken concerning thee, and hath appointed thee leader of Israel, it shall cause neither regret nor grief in my lord, because thou hast shed blood without cause, and avenged himself. When the Lord has acted well in favor of my lord, remember your servant."
1 Samuel 25:23-31. This unexpected attitude captured the attention of David and his entourage, causing them to stop immediately. The scene certainly surprised David. Abigail did not hesitate to act after being informed of the emergency. She promptly took responsibility for the incident, telling David, "May the sin be upon me, my lord." This humble and responsible approach set her apart. Instead of leading the conversation, she asked permission to speak first. Skillfully, Abigail guided the narrative to a favorable conclusion. Subtly, she expressed what she hoped would happen, almost causing David to unconsciously agree. Abigail presented David with a gift, but was perceptive enough to say that the gift was intended for the young men who accompanied him, not for David himself. If she mentioned that it was for David, it might suggest that he was only interested in material benefit, thus diminishing David's dignity, which would be disrespectful. Abigail expressed her request for forgiveness clearly and directly. "I ask that you forgive the transgression of this servant of yours." Abigail skillfully praised David's character despite his current agitation and anger. She did not refer to David's current state as something exceptional, but rather as something temporary. "My lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil is not found in you throughout your days." Abigail reminds David of God's promise for his life. The Lord will surely make a lasting house for my Lord. She encouraged him to look beyond the troubling circumstances of the moment to God's greater promise. Abigail also warned David not to act in such a way that he would regret it after fulfilling God's word. It will not be a burden to you to have shed blood without a cause. She urged David to trust in the Lord's hands rather than seek revenge on his own. Abigail took these actions without the consultation or approval of her husband Nabal. She openly and severely criticized her husband before David. Abigail made herself available for David's future considerations. When the Lord has done good to my Lord, remember your handmaid. My Lord's life will be safe in the beam of life with the Lord your God. The crux of Abigail's appeal was its remarkable symbolism. She said to David, "You are like a sheaf that the Lord holds fast and protects. Your enemies are like stones that the Lord casts." This encouraged David to act as someone closely connected to the Lord. Abigail's action brought to mind a time when David trusted God entirely for victory, when he defeated Goliath with a stone from a sling. Her skillful words realigned David's attention from the problem with Nabal to the Lord. Abigail's appeal was glorious, for she elevated David rather than lowering him. She emphasized David's noble calling, destiny, and integrity. Abigail simply urged David to consider whether her actions were in line with his future and integrity. 1 Samuel 25 verses 32 to 35. David said to Abigail,
"Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. Blessed be your wisdom and discernment. Blessed are you, who prevented me from shedding blood today and from seeking revenge with my own hands. As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, who kept me from harming you, if you had not been so quick to meet me, not one of Nabal's men would have survived until the morning."
David accepted what she brought and said,
"Go up to your house in peace. Behold, I have heard your voice and granted your request this day."
David learned a valuable lesson: our hurt feelings never justify disobedience. Although we may feel justified in sinning against those who sin against us, our hurt feelings never make us righteous. At the same time, Abigail reminded David of his destiny to reign over Israel with integrity. If David had killed Nabal in his home, he would have permanently tarnished his reputation among the Israelites, raising questions about his trustworthiness. He could also provoke Saul's wrath, as it would be a legitimate justification for persecuting him as a criminal. Blessed be thy counsel, and blessed be thou. It is important to note that Abigail did not approach David empty-handed. Her appeal was practical, including the payment due to David. When David accepted the gift, he recognized that the debt was paid and nothing was outstanding. At that moment, David experienced the blessing of being kept from sin. It is a blessing to be forgiven, but it is even more incredible to be kept from sin. When Abigail came to Nabal, he was holding a banquet in his house, like a king's banquet. Nabal was in a good mood because he was very drunk, so she said nothing to him until dawn. But in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him everything, and his heart within him died, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. Nabal was oblivious to the danger he was in, and his greed and foolishness led to his downfall. Abigail played a vital role in saving Nabal and David from their own choices, but she could not prevent divine judgment on Nabal. This event shows that God is sovereign and provides judgment when necessary. In 1 Samuel 25:33, David recognized the blessing of being prevented from taking revenge with my own hands. This demonstrates that David did not need to take revenge, as God was capable of delivering justice. 1 Samuel 25:39-44, when David heard of Nabal's death, he said,
"Blessed be the Lord, who pleaded my cause against Nabal and prevented me from taking revenge. For the Lord has brought the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head."
David recognized that Nabal's death was a judgment from God, and this was because David chose to let God act rather than take revenge. David proposed marriage to Abigail, and she accepted. Her appeal to David, "Remember your servant," was answered. David took Abigail as his wife, an appropriate action under the circumstances. Although David was already married to Michal, Saul had given her to another man, making her available to David again later. The story of Abigail and David is a powerful reminder of the complexities of human emotions and the importance of acting wisely in the face of adversity. Abigail proved to be a wise, perceptive, and courageous woman, acting quickly to prevent an imminent tragedy. Her intervention not only preserved Nabal's life, but also safeguarded David's integrity and directed him to fulfill his divine destiny. The episode teaches us valuable lessons about emotional control, eternal perspective, and the transformative power of forgiveness. Abigail's humble posture and kind words show how we can positively influence situations when we seek a peaceful solution, even when justified in our feelings of indignation. Abigail's ability to navigate the conversation skillfully, respectfully, and logically encourages us to communicate clearly and consider the consequences of our actions. Her example reminds us that honoring God and the search for the common good must be at the center of our decisions. If you enjoyed exploring this biblical story and want to continue learning inspiring lessons like this, subscribe to our channel and activate the bell to receive more uplifting and enriching content. God bless you.